This episode is brought to you by Elevate OS, the only all-in-one community operating system. Elevate OS transforms property management, combining resident engagement, reservations, rent payments, maintenance, and concierge services into a single super app. It also uniquely integrates access control, intercoms, package lockers, and thermostats, eliminating app fatigue and redefining modern apartment living. Visit elevateos.com/MMN for a free demo and see how they can help you level up your operations. Welcome to the Multifamily Collective. It is that time of the week again where you pick up your favorite beverage. For me, it's Proud Mary Coffee Roasters, the Humbler, and your favorite writing utensil and your favorite notebook, because we have an exciting episode coming to you today. So the guest I have today is Kelly Segretto, the founder of Segretto Consulting, which is a boutique firm that helps property management companies scale with clarity, structure, and systems that actually work. Kelly and I unpacked a lot of things. We unpacked EOS as an operating system. That's an entrepreneurial operating system, and some of the good, the bad, and the ugly as it relates to that. We unpacked things related to people in your organization. We unpack things like process in an organization. We talked about some of the hot buttons and cold issues in an organization. We ran the gamut of how Kelly could come into an organization like yours, help you put people, systems, processes, disciplines, and routines in place that help take your organization to the next level. And Kelly is in one of the most beautiful cities in all of America, Utah. Beautiful mountains, beautiful city, great outdoors person, loves to be active and out in the community. So that part was highly interesting to me as well. But I would like for you to, again, to pick up your favorite beverage, get ready, settle in, pick up a pen. You're going to get lots of notes out of this episode. So sit back and enjoy. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I love starting the show out with big smiles. That's fantastic. So I forgot to ask you before we hit the record button. You're in Texas, is that right?
Utah. But you were so close.
Utah, Texas, Utah, they're really kind of close. I'm really embarrassed on that. My wife and I just drove through Utah. We stopped off at the Arches and Bryce Canyon and what's the other one? There's a really famous one. The Narrows, Angels. Yeah, we did all that literally a week ago. So I love your state.
It's a beautiful place. I feel really lucky to be here.
Are you in Salt Lake City?
Yeah, I'm up in Salt Lake.
All right, yeah.
I don't get down to the Arches, but we do a lot outside. We do a lot of rock climbing and hiking, outdoor, anything outdoors, really.
I gotta tell you, we didn't stop in Salt Lake City specifically, but wow, what an unbelievably beautiful city that is.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a little bit jealous.
You should be. I mean, within 2 minutes, I can be on a mountain. Right. It's pretty phenomenal.
All right, moving on. It's fantastic. Well, hey, I want to dive right in here. You came across my radar at some point. I've actually watched a few of the podcasts that you've done in past other podcast hosts, and I was very intrigued by you and your story. So maybe we just start out by you just tell us very briefly what it is you do in your consulting service, and then I'm just going to go from there, and we'll have a big, fantastic discussion.
Yeah, we are a property management consulting business, and we do all of really the foundational pieces of business. And so it's technology, it's teams, and it's process are the three kind of pillars that we mostly focus on. And we help businesses to be their best selves, essentially. I started my business because I wanted to elevate the standards of property management. And I get to wake up and do what I love every single day and work with a lot of different amazing people. And so it's been a wonderful and crazy adventure.
So I have to tee up something there. You use the word love, the L word. And when is it fair to say for you specifically, when you do something you love, it doesn't really feel like work? I've heard people say that in the past, and I'm just curious.
Yeah, 1,000%. 1,000%. I feel like I wouldn't say that it was ever work. It feels like an opportunity to problem solve and to create things and to help people through different struggles and give perspective to businesses that maybe they don't have on their own, but it definitely doesn't feel like work.
It's, they say, or I've heard it said, and I'll butcher this, but like if you wake up and you just do what you love to do, it's a lot less taxing on your mental capacity. So at the end of the day, when you go home to your little ones or your significant other, you're more fully present when you're in that sort of strike zone of what you do or toil with all day long.
Yeah, we have to realize that work is what we do for most of our waking hours. And so if you're not doing something that you love, then that affects everything. It affects how you show up for your family, how you show up for yourself. Every component of your life ties back to whether or not you're happy at work or at least fulfilled in the work that you do.
That's right. So I think this is a good jumping off point for us in terms of so extending what you love to do into the world in the way of your consulting service and business. You've, I imagine, worked with a lot of operators. You touched on three things right out of the gate. What made you realize that there was a need for your service out there in the marketplace? Like what was that aha moment where you went, I got to get out of here and I got to get into this and I got to extend this love into the world?
It actually came from an old colleague of mine who reached out during COVID. He had a friend that was struggling with their business and he didn't have time and capacity to help him because, as an operator himself, he's busy in the weeds of his business and building his empire. And so he reached out to me to see if I had capacity to be able to help a friend of his. And that's kind of where this all was born. It came out of just word of mouth for the first couple of years, a side thing that I did to help people out. Then I eventually did the plunge and jumped in both feet and quit my day job and went all in to consultant. But it really started out as an opportunity that was kind of out of nowhere for me. I'd never thought about being a consultant. I'd never thought that that was really a role that existed in this space. And as we're seeing more and more consultants pop into this space now, it's so cool to see people be able to help transform these businesses. So it's an exciting place to be for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think to your point about a lot of people jumping into this, it's interesting to me. I've been around a long time. Don't let the gray beard fool you, but it's as if a lot of people have grown up in this business. We've aged to a point of maturity in this business, hopefully intellectually as much as physically, and now it's time to give back. And I think the consulting practice is a perfect way to do that. And there are so many genres of property management that it makes sense that there might be more than one out there doing it. I read somewhere you you use the word firefighting mode, and it brought to mind several times I worked in the industry where there was a lot of firefighting going on in an organization, and it never seemed like we could get to work on the business because we're constantly putting out these fires. Can you talk to us about? I have to imagine you have stories about property management firms that are just on fire, they're firefighting, but you came in and you did something to help them put that fire out.
Yeah, I think a lot of times property management is reactive instead of proactive. It's really easy for the business owner to be the one that's pulled into the weeds constantly, feeling like they're the only one that can really take care of each of those fires and put those things out. What I've been able to do with multiple teams is come in and help the business owner specifically step out of the weeds and really start to trust and rely on their team. And a lot of times what that means is that we're reorganizing what their team structure looks like. We're reorganizing the people who are sitting in the seats on the bus to make sure that they have the type of people, the type of personalities, and that the fit really is the team member doing their highest and best contribution, as well as the owner being able to trust and let go because they know that the process is in place that they're going to follow and they have that visibility into the day-to-day of their organization. And so a lot of times it's those two things. It's the people in your organization and the processes that you've developed that help you to be able to kind of step out of that day-to-day and rely on, they've got this and have that trust that they've got it.
So I'm really curious as it relates to that. You walk into an organization, owner has been in this firefighting mode, they've imbued in their mind that they have to do all of this stuff and behave in a certain way. How do you start to rewire the neural pathway from firefighting to, hey, look, you really can trust the system? How do you do that? Like practically, how do you get somebody to rewire that in their head?
And I mean, I think part of it is they hired me for a reason. And when somebody brings me into their organization, they need honesty and they need transparency and they need clarity. And so when I'm coming into that conversation, it is with a lot of honesty and it is a lot of hard truths that they hear at the very beginning. But if someone has signed up to work with me, it's typically because we've built that rapport, we've built that trust in initial conversations, and they're able to say, okay, wait, we did ask for this opinion. It's not like an outside person comes in and says, you're doing everything wrong. Immediately you're put on the defense if that happens. You're like, what do
Right.
you mean I'm doing everything wrong? I'm amazing. You don't know what you're talking about. But when somebody proactively seeks someone to come into their business, to come and be that transformer and be that sounding board to say, hey, have you thought about doing it this way? They're more open and more receptive in general. And it's kind of giving that opportunity for them to hear what feedback you have. I've certainly had owners where it hasn't gone that way. And we've had conversations that are like, let me remind you why we're here. Let me remind you what the issues are that we're solving for and that we've promised that we're going to solve for so that we can get back on track. But it's all about trust, it's about rapport, and it's about really just honest, transparent feedback that you're able to give.
Do you, it brings to mind, I'll make a statement, then ask a question. Somebody described consultant services inside of organization as like I'm the sandpaper in your company's like, right? So it's not going to feel good. It's certainly not going to feel good, but
I could see that. I could see that. Yeah. And it depends on the problem too. And it also depends on the personality type of person that I'm working with. If you're working with a business owner that is a high D personality, a dominant personality, the way that you communicate is different. The abrasiveness you can use, the grit of sandpaper you can use is different than if you're working with a yellow personality that is more sensitive and very bubbly and very positive, and the glass is always not only half full but fully full type of personality. The way you deliver information to different personalities is different too.
very true. This is a question of curiosity. Let's say from 2018 to 2024 plus minus, you have a lot of people who entered the multifamily space that really were taking advantage of a moment in time where money was widely available or easily available, and they
Hmm.
got in, and let's say they caught the car, and then they didn't necessarily know how to operate, even if they were outsourcing to third-party property management managers. Did you see a lot of that, or sort of an amp up in your business during that course of time?
Yeah, for sure. And I've seen a lot more of the developers that built projects who then hired a property manager. The property management didn't go as they expected, and they ended up opening their own management companies to manage their assets. And many of them don't do very much well.
Yeah, right. That's right.
They have this mentality of like, how hard could it be? And they
Right.
jump into property management, which a lot of people do, but they don't understand some of the nuances and some of the best practices that have been curated over a really long time. Multifamily specifically has become this very mature side of property management. There's a lot of known quantities in multifamily. There's a lot of best practices. And if you're coming into this without that experience and that knowledge and that background, it's really easy from face value to say, oh, I can do that. But there's a lot of nuances that they don't expect. And so I've worked with a couple of multifamily property management companies that are just kind of trying to navigate that path of owner operator, trying to become the professional property management outfit that they want to manage their asset.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that, having been in the industry a very long bit of time, probably 3 or 4 cycles now. It seems that it's sort of the pendulum swinging further toward a lot of people getting into the space, that not that it's a bad thing. It's just it is a lot harder than putting up a website and putting a telephone number out on a sign. It's a lot
Yeah,
harder than that. So
for sure. There's a lot of moving pieces. That's what I love about property management. That's what really attracted me to it in the first place, is that it's so multifaceted. You get to play in legal and customer success and maintenance and construction and all of these different verticals of property and real estate. And it's fascinating when you start learning how to tie all those things together in an effective way. It's like an endless puzzle.
That's right. Which I think leads to a question. I'm going to segue by you cited somebody who is a high D. So my imagination tells me you're using some sort of assessment tool to identify this high D, but then you're carrying that on to creating what comes to mind for me is processes in an organization. So can you talk about what a high D means for our audience that may not know what that means? And then kind of talk to us about how that segues into your installation of processes that help the business operate.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you can analyze personalities. One of the common ways that I started using early on in my career was the DISC system, which a high D is a dominant personality, or, what I normally notice with high D personalities is things like they don't want you to send them 3 paragraphs to summarize the work that you did for them. They want to see bullet points. They want to know what your solution was, and then they want to move on from it. I had a boss who was a high D personality, and the very first email I sent him, he wrote back simply too many words.
Yeah.
And so I was actually talking to him about this. He was my boss years and years and years ago, but we just had lunch a couple months ago and I was talking to him about it and he just laughed. He's like, "Yeah, sounds like me." But I learned how to communicate that you have to communicate differently with different personalities. Different people want to receive information different ways.
So
In
true.
property management, we need to find out how the owners and the residents want to be communicated with so that we can communicate effectively. I was reading a book, I believe it was the Surrounded by Idiots, and
Yeah,
they talk about communication is judged by the listener. And I love that idea because it doesn't matter if I think that I'm a good communicator. If you don't hear what I'm trying to say to you, then it's for nothing.
that's
It
right.
doesn't matter.
That's right. It's say failed. It's interesting. I heard a CEO one time say, and I'll probably butcher this, but he in effect said, you repeat things ad nauseum to the point where you get sick and tired of hearing yourself talk, and then only then are you starting to communicate.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard similar. Communication is fascinating. And it's extremely important in what I do, and it's extremely important in what my clients do for their customers and their clients. And so it's such an important part of our world, especially now that we've stepped to a lot more text message and written communication. We know that the way that we communicate, 86%, I think it is nonverbal.
That's right.
And so how much of that communication we are missing now going to these more text formatted ways that we communicate, it's wild. So, missing that personal connection that you create when you communicate in person, how do we infuse more of that into our processes, our automated communication? How do we still make it feel human? How do we still connect with the people that we're speaking with?
That's right. And it's not necessarily just adding an emoji to the end of your sentence, right? It's
I think that's what emojis were born out of, was we were trying to find a way to give that emotion back into our text messages. And I'm like, what does this sign mean emotionally? I'm not sure.
right, right, right. Thank God for emoji dictionary. My kids send emojis, I'm like, please.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me Google what that means in Urban Dictionary so that
Yeah,
I know how to communicate with my children. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. We'll talk to you. So I imagine you get into an organization and you've laid out a roadmap. You've given various people in the organization playbooks for their particular role in this process. You've got everybody in the right seats, but you find that sometimes people are just resistant to the new way of doing business. And I want to use this as a segue to get into the EOS work that you do. But talk to us about what do you do specifically with that person who just can't seem to get with the program, not to put it crassly, but you just don't break themselves against the process.
Yeah. So it's always a challenge when you come into an organization, you make big changes. And so we're very strategic about what changes we make and when, and the timing of those changes. And we're also thinking about, okay, worst case, what happens if we lose some of our team members along the way? Because especially if you're going through and you're doing a big transformation where you're changing the culture of a business and you're changing the processes in a business and you're requiring the way that people function on a day to day, say you're adding a new software or you're adding another layer to their day to day that makes it more complicated. There's always going to be a risk that those team members are not the right team members to continue doing that work, either because they're unhappy with it or they don't have the capacity to really learn these new technologies, or there's a lot of different reasons why a team member isn't going to be the same fit in the organization you create from the organization you stepped into. And so one of the things that we'll typically do is we'll meet with each of the team members and get an understanding of what they really enjoy doing, what they really don't enjoy doing, what they feel that they're really good at doing, what they feel like they're really not good at doing, so that we can get an understanding of where they feel their best seat on the bus is, where they feel their highest and best contribution is. So we're taking that information into that conversation of, okay, now as we redevelop the organization or we bring new processes in, is this still going to be an ideal fit? Or does this person really belong? Is their stronger suit in a totally different role than where we've had them? I've had organizations where we've stepped in and I'm like, why are you a back end organizer when you really should be a front end salesperson?
Yeah.
Like your personality is outgoing and bubbling and you build rapport in 5 seconds and you're in the wrong seat. And so there's some of that, but we do also have times where as soon as you start making changes, you watch somebody disconnect in the room. And those are difficult conversations, but they start as conversations. They start as retraining. And then if we can't retrain, a lot of times we end up parting ways with those individuals because it's no longer a place that they're happy anymore.
Sure. It's, I think to your point about shifting a culture, it's, in a perfect world, to your point about also it being a conversation, people self-select
Mm-hmm.
versus having to be, I don't want to say forced out. That sounds sort of crass also, but it's right. You want, like you led with, you love what you do. And if you're not in that sort of love and joy state of mind when you're coming to work every day and spending time around people who you influence and influence you, then might be a better place out there for you in the world somewhere. I want to segue to EOS. I have been, call it a disciple of Vern Harnish and Scaling Up and Gino Wickman and all these guys who've done this. And Traction is another one. I think they're all sort of intertwined. But EOS is really, and maybe it's just because I know a lot of people that do EOS, but it seems like it's making its way into the multifamily space a little more.
For sure.
It's having a moment, so to speak. But there's good implementation. There's bad implementation. Got to talk to us about first, what is EOS, just so our listeners, viewers know, and then talk to us about the goods and the bads from a high level.
Yeah. So EOS is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It is a kind of beautiful structure to run an organization. Everything from creating your vision and your core values. You're setting up yourself with your 1 year, your 3 year, and your 10-year plan. We talk about big, hairy, audacious goals for the business. Where do you want to go in the future? Where do you see this pie in the sky ideas of where do you see your future in your organization or outside of your organization? Where do you want to be? But it's a really great tool that then helps your team not only set those goals and that culture and that vision, but then also make progress towards those goals on an annual basis. And that's done through a couple of different things. You have scorecard metrics, which are the metrics and the numbers that you're looking at on a weekly basis. And then you have your rocks, which are your quarterly projects that each team member is responsible for. These projects, they could be big or small as long as they can be completed in 90 days. And the goal is that each person has 1 to 3 of these rocks that they're completing by the end of the quarter. And so you're having this opportunity for your entire organization to row together and be working towards common goals and to celebrate those wins and have those successes. And so it's kind of this beautiful matching with property management and the way that we run these businesses, especially because we have a tendency to get stuck in the weeds and in the busy work. It's hard to remember to do those projects that keep the business pushing forward. So it will never happen if you don't plan for it. And so I think the reason we see more and more property management companies, both in the multifamily and the single family space, leaning into EOS or systems like EOS, it's because of that opportunity to create goals, but then also have that forward momentum continuously moving towards those goals.
Yeah, it's very well said. And I think it's, structure and cadence and systems and processes. In my head, the biggest hang up, these are my own words, so certainly correct me, is creating discipline in organization. And discipline sometimes is really boring. And I think a really good business, for all intents and purposes, is super boring. And you want it to be boring. And you can celebrate and create fun in other ways, but your business should be routine and kind of boring if you're really very successful at EOS.
Yes, in the idea that you have process and the process is followed by all, to use EOS terms.
Yeah,
Yes, it should be that you're going through the motions and you're doing the same thing every time. That's the same for property management in general. To be fair housing compliant, the best way to be fair housing compliant is to treat everyone exactly the same every time.
that's right.
That's how you protect yourself in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so having really dialed in process is just another way that you can help your team to stay compliant and to lower your risk tolerance within your risk level within your business. And so, yes, it can be boring, but property management is never boring.
No, no, no. It's fun in other ways. You want the business part to be boring. You're right.
Yeah.
Never a
Yeah.
dull moment.
Yeah. But because of that, also the structure of having really dialed in process is actually freeing up your brain space to be able to deal with those more complex issues that come up with tenant relationships and owner relationships and fires that happen, literal fires that happen, or other emergencies that you have to be able to kind of pivot away from what you're doing and handle. But when you come back to your desk, if you have dialed in processes, you can pick back up and context switch back into what you were doing much, much faster. And so you don't have as much lost time as well in an organization that has really solid process.
That's right. Do you think in this system, when you pick the rocks for the individuals, suffice to say they're in the right seats, but you've picked the right projects for those particular individuals, their skill set, where they fit in the organization, those are when you think about the concept of working on the business or working in the business, those projects are really germane to the sort of dichotomy of those two things. Is that fair to say, or the right way to put that?
Yeah, I would say your projects, your rocks are working on the business. Your daily tasks are working in the business. And
Yeah.
so those processes, that's working in the business typically. But your projects and your rocks and those extra things that you're doing to kind of keep working towards that annual goal, that is absolutely working on the business. And you're actually helping each of your team members to be part of that process of working on the business instead of you stepping outside the business and being the only one working on it. You're getting everybody to kind of collaborate and feel like they're part of it, which makes them feel more invested and more proud of the organization that they're part of as well.
When you think about architecting the rocks for individuals specifically, and you're thinking about call it a high potential individual or somebody that doesn't necessarily have a skill set today, but you want them to have that skill set tomorrow. Do you see a project or projects as a way of sort of helping them do the reps to get there, or do you see that more on the task side of the business that you would build somebody up for the future?
Both, absolutely both. And anytime you're helping a team member to stretch themselves and learn new skills, that can be in a new process that they're coming into. That can also be in a project that they get excited about. And I wouldn't say that we necessarily encourage assigning projects or assigning rocks to individuals
Mm,
as much as we collectively will come together with each team or each department and say, what are the big projects that need to happen? And let them have the input and the ideas that say, I think we need to do this. You can also add yours in of these are the projects I see from my seat that I'd like to see for your department. But you're getting that team buy-in to what the projects that are the highest and best projects for that quarter are. And then you're getting them to volunteer to do them. So you're getting that buy-in early on in that rock process rather than here is a new project that I'm going to set on your plate in addition to everything else you need to do. Good luck, guys. I'm expecting it by the end of the quarter. It's a very different way that we're approaching these projects because we really want their buy-in and their excitement, and we want the right person doing those projects. And it has to be somebody that's excited about it in order for it to, or at least somebody who has an ownership of that project in order for it to get across the finish line.
that makes sense. I like the way you think about that. I know we have sort of a time constraint here, and I don't want to get out of any interview or conversation without talking about technology. And I think that you have a way about, call it assessing tech, whether it's current tech in your tech stack and or new tech that you should bring into an organization. How do you go about thinking about that with an owner?
It's so fun. The technology part is so fun
I love tech.
because the reality is that we have seen a huge boom of technology in the property management world.
That's right.
From the property management softwares that are continuously adding themselves to the list of property management software that we have,
Yeah.
to more self-showing solutions, more AI solutions, agentic AI, all of these different components of our businesses, we're seeing different technology solutions pop up for. There's more property management maintenance solutions coming up and leasing solutions coming up and operations and process solutions coming up. And so we're kind of inundated right now with a bunch of different tech. I think the number that I saw was 300 to 500 new prop tech companies come online every year.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And it's been that way for at least the last 5 years. So
Yeah,
you add those all up, and the amount of tech that has come into our industry is insurmountable.
that's right.
How do you keep track of what tool is doing what and whether it plays nice with your tools? And what does Open API actually mean? Because it can mean different things to different companies, and it's not really open all of the time. And so we have to be able to look at technology from a perspective of what is the capacity of my team to adopt tech and to use tech? Because technology that you adopt that is not used is worthless. The technology that's going to be the most beneficial for you is the technology that your team can actually use. And so we're assessing the skill level of team members and the appetite for technology before we're looking at, does this solution come with a new technology for your business? And so we're looking at the abilities of the team. Once we understand the abilities of the team, then we're looking at your other technology. What other tech do you have in your company that we need to be sensitive to? If you're on a property management software and you're on a self-showing software and you're on a ticketing process, like a shared inbox software, one, do you have all of those talking to each other yet? Are there integrations that we can add that will make your life easier? Or do integrations even exist for those softwares? Is it possible, or should one of those softwares be what we switch out because we can get your softwares now speaking to each other a little bit more effectively nowadays than we could 5 years ago when you adopted that software in the first place? And so we're looking at what your current technology is and the capacity and the capability of that software first. And then if there's still an issue we're not solving for within that tech stack that you have, then we're looking at, what is the best technology in that next vertical that you need to bring into your organization. And so there's a lot of different ways and different reasons and different methods that we use when we're looking at tech for different organizations. But that's kind of a nutshell of some of the ways that we can look at it.
I like that. I think there's It's interesting. I read a paper Don Beveridge wrote several years ago about Wi-Fi. And it's just, it's complicated, right? To put bulk Wi-Fi or the other types of Wi-Fi that you put into a community. And there was no real process for that. And I think his attempt in the paper was to actually author a process. And I think the same thing applies today with, the broad range of prop tech that you just talked about. The prop tech that's chasing is a solution for problems we didn't even know we had. It's like there has to be a real process for vetting out a technology. I like what you're saying in that it's kind of people first, and then I imagine a little bit of process. Make sure your people and your processes are right, and then your tech assessment comes into play, because you certainly could put tech to bad process, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah, with technology, when I'm looking at specific technologies, because I do have people who will come to me and they're like, "Hey, we're considering implementing X, and we really want to understand whether this is the right technology for us." And if it's not a technology that I already know and I need to dig in and really understand it, the first thing that I want to do is get a free trial or a sandbox account for it, because the sales guy is going to tell you all the greatest and most wonderful, rosiest picture about how well and how amazing and how magical their tool is. That's their job.
That's right.
My job is to dig into that tool and see what it really does. And so I'll use it till I break it, because I want to find the edges of what the capability of that tool is, in order to honestly and confidently be able to go back to the owner and say, yes, it can do, or it cannot do what you need it to do. Yes, it can integrate, or it cannot integrate, or here is the limited capacity in which it can integrate with your existing software. And so when we're doing an assessment, it's a full, deep assessment of technology platforms, because I need to be able to confidently tell somebody what they can plan for and what they can rely on. If a software is buggy, I'm going to tell them.
Yeah.
If a software is not complete, I'm going to tell them. If a software is really strong in these 3 areas, but these other 2 that they're promising aren't quite there yet, I'm going to tell them that too. And so it's a matter of really digging in and understanding the full capability of a software, and then being able to give that educated opinion to the owners of the organization so that they can make an informed decision.
I love that. Love that. As we wrap up here, I'm going to take another hard left or right turn.
I'm excited.
Yeah. I'm interested to know if so people who are listening right now that are, it's resonating, and they're like, yeah, I'm stuck in the weeds. The owner, or the person who's influencing real decision in this organization, I'm just stuck. What is one thing that you could say to them right now, and then just segue into telling people where they can learn more about your consulting firm and yourself, where they can contact you? But what is the one thing they could do this week that would change their business?
One thing. I have to make sure it's the right thing. I think most owners know what their big issues are.
True statement.
I think most owners avoid their big issues.
Also a true statement.
I would say take 5 minutes, write down the big issues that you know exist in your organization, and then choose one. Choose one to make one step towards making it a little bit better. You can't overwhelm yourself by pulling yourself in too many different directions at once. That's why things like an ongoing issues list, that's why things like rocks, that's why things like tasks are really beneficial in an organization, because you're solving those issues continuously.
That's right.
And so if you're stuck right now and you're not sure where to start by jotting down your top 5 issues in your organization. Look at that list and prioritize the one that you're going to focus on through the end of the year. And then make a game plan for that one thing.
I love that. I also think you could potentially pick up the phone and call Kelly, or you could text message her with an emoji of like, oh, my head's blown off, or whatever it is. So Kelly, why don't you tell us where people could reach out to you if they feel stuck in the weeds?
Yeah, they can go to ksegretto.com. That's KSEGRETTO.com. And you can click the consultation button and book time with me directly. It's a free consultation. Love to talk to you about your business and learn more about how we can best help you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I feel like we could do a round 2 and just unpack EOS and all these other. I love that.
Anytime. Let me know.
Excellent. Well, thank you for investing some of your time with us today. I appreciate it. And for everybody else, we'll see you next time.
Thank you.